Welcome to Intuitive Astrology with Molly McCord. Thank you so much for joining me today, as this is a Monday podcast episode where we focus on a particular astrological topic or theme. And today we're going to discuss Saturn Retrograde in Pisces. We're going to talk about the themes that will come up during Saturn's retrograde, which begins June 29th at 19 degrees of Pisces, and Saturn travels back to 12 degrees of Pisces and stations direct on November 15th. So this retrograde is moving between 12 and 19 degrees of Pisces in your chart. And in astrology, this is also the second decan of Pisces. So we're going to discuss the significance of this energy on a deeper layer. You can get more of an understanding of what the Saturn retrograde will do for you by identifying where you have 12 to 19 degrees of Pisces in your chart by house. You do not need to have a planet or point at these degree points, but everyone has all 360 degrees of the astrological wheel in their chart. So you would just identify that territory, and that's where Saturn is going to be asking you to slow down and consciously review the themes and matters of this house. So I'll get to more specifics of the retrograde here in just a moment. But for those who are new or newer to astrology, I just want to quickly review what the themes of Saturn involve. Saturn is the ringed planet in our solar system, and those rings provide a good understanding to the archetypes associated with these energies. Saturn is about boundaries, responsibilities, and commitments, the limitations we have, what we have to work within, and how that strengthens us, how we learn to establish more boundaries. We learn what it means to show up in the world with our personal integrity and our self-respect. Saturn wants you to feel strong and confident enough to do things on your own, but often this involves challenges and lessons that we weren't necessarily expecting. Saturn is how we're able to honor our commitments and what others need from us as well. So there's an understanding of how our energy affects others and how they can rely upon us as we can rely upon them. Saturn is also connected with the 3D, the physical world, and our experience of time in this reality. And that time can feel like a constraint. It can also feel like, yes, that clock is always ticking. So what are you doing with your energy? How are you using your time responsibly and in a way that serves you best? Saturn is connected with our own mastery and authority, how we're here to continuously develop our skills and expertise in a tangible, realistic way. Saturn is then how we apply those skills and knowledge that is purposeful and typically dedicated to a particular outcome or result. That is something that Saturn values. Saturn wants to see what's coming from this. What are you gaining? What is developing? And you could apply this as well to, say, for example, education, where you go through a degree program or a schooling system, and at the end you graduate, you receive a degree, you are then rewarded with a new status of some kind. And that is very much a Saturn process where you showed up, you took the classes, you passed those tests and all those exams, and it led you to greater wisdom, intelligence, and skills you can apply in the real world. Saturn is also the planet of staying the course and showing up. Saturn does not want the shortcuts, and in fact thinks there's a lot to be gained from tests, from challenges, from even the hard knocks that we go through in life. But Saturn knows there is beauty in this. There are things that come from the trials and tribulations of what we go through in order to see and experience our energy in the real world. Saturn helps you step into your own authority and mastery. And Saturn is a tough cookie. And there's energies at play here when you are experiencing a strong Saturn transit that require you to get tougher and to look at what you can handle on your own. Now, we typically call Saturn a he, and I believe that this goes back to Roman times, when the god Saturn was honored through the annual festival in December called Saturnella. And Saturnella is actually when there was a sacrifice made at the temple of Saturn. And then there was celebration and feast, and it was a very lively energy. There was a lot of revelry and was a time to release oneself from the bounds of work and commitments. So there is the god Saturn, and that is why it's referred to through the pronoun of he, him. However, in astrology, Capricorn is actually associated with feminine maturity, as Capricorn is an earth sign and Capricorn rules Saturn. All earth signs are associated with feminine qualities and themes. And Saturn can also therefore be interpreted as the matriarchy as well as the patriarchy. It is the crone, the elder, the mentor, the wise queen who has served a long reign and who understands through her time of leadership and mastery what it means to take one's time, to sit carefully and assess decisions, to honor that it's not wise to rush into an immediate choice, and rather it's important to consider the consequences and what could play out over time. And consequences is another Saturn keyword that comes up when we're discussing these archetypal themes. So Saturn is referenced as both masculine and feminine, and for you, you can certainly decide which resonates the best and what makes the most sense for you. So after that brief understanding of Saturn, it is also about what has been unfinished. Saturn wants you to do your homework, wants you to complete your tasks, wants you to wrap things up. And that's especially true with Saturn in Pisces, where there are things here that need to close out, that are meant to unravel, dissipate, and be complete. It's important to understand this because Saturn in Pisces is about endings. It's about the things you need to complete and heal. It's how you are spiritually growing through lessons. Saturn in Pisces is also offering review and opportunities to reflect on what you have lived through, the choices you've made, how things have played out, what were the consequences, or what did happen after you made this choice or went down this path in your life. So there is an aspect of honest review here with Saturn and Pisces. And as Saturn stations retrograde at 19 degrees of Pisces on June 29th to travel back to 12 degrees of Pisces until November 15th, this area of your chart is where you are meant to slow down and review, to look at what else you can toss out or complete. What else are you ready to move on from, to no longer hold, and to work through even complicated or complex layers of closure. And it's not always easy, especially in Pisces. Pisces being the last sign of the zodiac, it can be where we push things under the rug, we avoid, we don't want to deal with something in ourselves, in our world, in our life. This is where Saturn brings us to task and says, look at this realistically. Understand, is this serving you, or is it something that's holding you back? And that could be part of the review process. That could also be where you require more time to yourself in your own energy to really think it through and understand, what am I learning, what am I healing, and what am I completing through the Saturn in Pisces intensity. Saturn brings a focal point of energy here. Saturn wants you to look at something, and Pisces is the invisible. Pisces is what you feel or what you sense. You don't always see it, and then Saturn makes it visible. So there is something that you are understanding in yourself that's coming to light. And as I say that, I'm getting the visual of, let's say you are on a boat floating in the ocean and you're looking at the water, and the water is clear enough. It's not dark, scary water. It's clear enough. And slowly something is coming up to the surface. And I'm seeing it as a jellyfish. And I'm seeing it slowly coming up to the surface, but it's only when it gets close enough to the surface that you can actually see it. That is Saturn. Saturn is bringing something up to the surface for you to see. It could feel like it's been slowly rising. It's been slowly coming into focus. And as you see it, it's giving you new understandings around yourself, your emotional world, how you've created your life, what your priorities are right now, what your commitments are. Basically, something you need to see is coming to the surface as Saturn moves through Pisces. And the retrograde phase is where you're able to now give yourself time to process it, to deal with it, to take care of it. Because remember, Saturn is about the real world. There needs to be some kind of process or tool or management approach to take care of this. Saturn is about what needs to be done. What do you need to do? And what do you need to change? And that is a strength of Pisces, where Pisces is mutable water. It's adaptable. It's made to ebb and flow. And with Saturn here, there's a structure that needs to be in place. And this could be, for example, where you make a commitment for something you want to close out or change, or you're making a decision around something you no longer want in your life, or perhaps you're realizing what you have created in your world and you're ready to move on from it and make some concrete changes. Whatever it might be, Saturn wants growth and maturity, wants you to feel strong enough to make a decision that's best for you, and wants you to trust it, especially in Pisces. And so during this Saturn retrograde, you could be realizing some things that are no longer good for you, that are no longer healthy or no longer satisfying. You could be realizing, I don't want to do that anymore. I don't want to be this version of myself. I'm ready for new tools. I'm ready for new understandings of what I can create or how I can live in this area of my life. Now, keep in mind, in 2024, Saturn has been moving fast, which is wonderful in some ways, but then the Saturn retrograde can really feel like you are slowing down and the brakes are being hit. Now, Saturn first entered this retrograde territory on March 19th. March 19th is when Saturn got to 12 degrees of Pisces and then traveled to 19 degrees until the end of June. So from March until June 2024, something has been coming up that you're meant to work through and review during this Saturn retrograde phase. So that could be quite clear to you. In fact, you could feel ready for it. You could feel like, yes, finally, I can focus on this. I can take care of this. I'm now going to have time and energy available to do whatever this is. And with that Saturn retrograde moving slowly, you could also feel like you finally can catch up. You can take a second look at something that's important in your world or in your life. So Saturn retrogrades can be quite productive, can be quite beneficial, especially if the first half of 2024 has been a lot, which it has. It certainly has, especially since we've had this intense Pluto in Aquarius moving into new territory, plus the eclipse energies. You might feel like with Saturn retrograde in Pisces, you finally can lean back, exhale, and evaluate, okay, this is what really needs to change in my life or in my world. This is where I am being called to task. Now, another layer of this Saturn retrograde to understand has to do with the fact that Saturn is hanging out and staying in the second decan of Pisces. And this adds more specifics and more meaning to what this retrograde can be bringing up for you. So let me explain this a bit more. Every astrology sign is composed of 30 degrees, and within those 30 degrees, we break them down into 10-degree segments that we call decans. And the first decan is 0 to 9 degrees, the second is 10 to 19 degrees, and the third decan is 20 to 29 degrees. And each of these decans provides more specific layers of understanding around themes and what comes up. Also, each decan is related to a ruling astrology sign. And that's because in the astrological wheel, there are 3 signs in each element. So Pisces is a water sign. The other water signs are Cancer and Scorpio. And Cancer and Scorpio each rule a decan of Pisces. And how it works is that the first decan of Pisces, 0 to 9 degrees, is ruled by Pisces. Then the second decan, from 10 to 19, is ruled by Cancer. And that's because Cancer is the next water sign. So that means the third decan of Pisces is ruled by Scorpio, because that is, again, the third water sign in the astrological wheel. So this applies to every astrological sign, but I'm only focusing here on Pisces, and I'm hoping to make this simple and clear. So again, the first decan of Pisces is ruled by Pisces. The second decan is ruled by Cancer, because Cancer comes after Pisces. And then the third decan is ruled by Scorpio, since Scorpio comes after Cancer. So when Saturn is retrograde in the second decan from 10 to 19 degrees of Pisces, the sublayer of influence is Cancer. And so this means that there is more going on underneath the depths of Pisces that relates to Cancer energy. Cancer is home, the mother, the family, your first experience of unconscious emotions. Cancer is related to how you feel safe and secure in the world. And when you do, you are warm, you are open, you are available. And then perhaps when you don't feel safe, you could feel defensive, shut down, a very hard shell, and unreachable. Cancer is also associated with the moon and the fluctuations of water. When we look at Pisces and Cancer energies together, there is heightened sensitivity. There is a lot coming up here that could be swimming around in the subconscious, and typically those are fears. Those can be emotional wounds. Those could be anything from your childhood, specifically related to karma with the mother or a mother figure. It could also be related to energies within your family, your lineage, your soul family, and what you're closing out and ending in this lifetime around those themes. The second decan of Pisces being related to Cancer, as I said, is not only highly sensitive, but it is an empath, very sensitive to energies, very intuitive and psychic. The ability to understand what is going on below the surface, even when you can't explain it. It's an immediate feeling, a sense of something hits you, that energy, that message, it comes through quite quickly, and you could have a knowingness or a feeling, something very powerful giving you information about what's going on within the depths of either your beingness or another's beingness. So this is certainly a hypersensitivity to one's environment, to the spaces you're in and what you're picking up on with all of your open feelers. I also feel like this energy signature is highlighting how so many of us came into this human experience, into this lifetime, being very sensitive and overly open to energies, and how receptive we were at a young age without knowing it. And there is a hypersensitivity here that can be shut down early on. So where I'm going with this is that there is an energy trail here with this Saturn retrograde in the second decan of Pisces that's highlighting the parts of yourself you had to cover up, shut down, push away, or avoid when you were younger, and able to adapt to the circumstances and environment that you grew up in. And there could be things here that you experienced that were wildly misunderstood, parts of yourself that were not honored, not respected. I mean, I'm getting the visual of parents being insulting, parents being like, you're too sensitive, you need to get stronger, you need to get tougher, stop crying. It was almost like abusive, not like abusive. That is traumatic. That is hard on the gentle, soft child energy. There is an imprint here of what I'm seeing, and please only trust this if it resonates with you. Don't make it fit. Don't force it to be accurate. Trust it if it's true for you. but I'm getting the visual of not being welcomed as a sensitive, loving, kind being. And there were parts of the energy that you realized it's not safe to be emotional. It's not safe to be sensitive. It's not safe because it's perceived as weakness. This isn't safe. And there was something that you had to bury, you had to push away, you had to deny and avoid in yourself because you were not around others who allowed you to be all of your energy, to be all of your feelings, or all of your beautiful, dynamic, vibrant colors. And so I feel like there's something with this Saturn retrograde that brings you back to how you arrived here, being ultra sensitive. And then before the age of 7, it was shut down. And the age of 7 and 8 is important in astrology. It could even be 6, 7, 8, because that's when every single one of us has our first natal square from transiting Saturn to our natal Saturn. And what that means is that the first 7 years of life, you are being formed. There's a lot going on. We know this in our brains, in our cognition, in our bodies, in our beingness. So much is developing and growing in the first 7 years of life. And then that first Saturn square at 6, 7, or 8 years old is some kind of reality check where you are then further integrating into the physical world, but it's through some kind of perceived challenge or hardship, a disappointment, something that is tough and rough, something that takes you out of innocence. It's the first time in your life where you realize that you're now bumping up against external energies. The external world is now coming into your life in a more impressionable way. And this can be when you realize at an unconscious level who you can be and who you cannot be. And then something gets shut down, it's closed out, it's no longer being nurtured, it's no longer being watered. It's like that forgotten plant that is dying in the corner. It doesn't receive water or sunlight or any attention for what it needs. And this second decan of Pisces brings up the parts of ourselves that need us to now be that parent, that need us to step forward and say, this feeling matters. What I need counts. I deserve to be heard. And I'm also here to embrace and love all of myself, especially the super sensitive parts that were not received. And I'm feeling this as an energy that has been wildly misunderstood, and I'm seeing it twisted, like it became twisted or something shifted along the growth trajectory that it became something else. And it could be the parts of yourself you hated, the parts of yourself you shut down, the parts of yourself where you judged yourself, you shamed yourself, you told yourself you're too weak, you're too sensitive, you're too emotional. Essentially, the energy got turned onto itself. And I'm feeling like this theme is really big during the Saturn retrograde in Pisces because there's something that's made to come to life now, and it's coming to life on your own terms, but with new boundaries around how to strengthen your sensitivities and the energies you pick up on, how to trust and listen to your intuition and the energy you're feeling, even when you don't understand it at times, especially when you don't understand it. This is strengthening your empathic self, strengthening the highly sensitive person energy that maybe you didn't even realize you were because it wasn't acceptable. It wasn't something that others even wanted from you. There was no place for it, and there was certainly no love for it. But I feel like with this Saturn retrograde, there's things coming up about strengthening what you didn't get when you were younger, understanding how to be that adult you needed, how to be that caretaker and that loving authority figure that understands all the gifts that come with sensitivity. It can be common for these gifts of sensitivities to be shut down and then revealed or opened up again later in life as we start to understand what they offer and what they hold, especially because they connect us to more of our ability to trust ourselves, to read an environment, to sense what others are feeling or thinking. They connect us with our psychic gifts and our ability to trust what we're picking up on before we completely understand it. So coming in with a super sensitivity, with empathic abilities, with psychic or intuitive abilities that were shut down, that were not honored, can also be a part of your own spiritual growth trajectory as you're learning how valuable these gifts are, even if you were taught otherwise when you were younger, when you were unconscious and unaware. This Saturn retrograde in the second decan of Pisces could bring about an experience that shows you what has occurred in your world from that shutdown. It can reconnect you with a repressed memory, an event, an experience, something in your life that you thought you had to push away or fully detach from. And then it comes alive because Saturn is saying, how is that coping mechanism really working for you? Is it working for you? Or is it pulling you away from parts of yourself that need love, acceptance, compassion, and forgiveness? So this could be a time phase of forgiving yourself for what you shut down because it wasn't supported when you were younger. It could be something coming up now that you don't even see the correlation. You don't even know how it relates to your childhood or to your wonder years. But it's showing you that our ability to trust what we feel and sense as empaths and intuitives is one of our best gifts. And so Saturn wants to bring it to the table. Saturn wants you to see it, again, making the invisible visible. And Saturn wants you to claim it, to be strong, to feel fortified, to feel that this is a part of yourself that you can cherish and work with, even if you're doing it for the first time in your life. And Saturn relating to the father or any authority figure that you looked up to. And so that could be a mother figure, a father figure, a parent, or whomever raised you. This could bring up issues related to what you didn't receive from them. It can bring up where you weren't supported and how this has been a part of your spiritual path. This could also be part of your karma, where in previous lifetimes, the roles were reversed, where perhaps you were the parent and you were too busy or too consumed with other matters to give your child what they needed or to really acknowledge their skills and abilities. Of course, I'm speaking in general terms, so only trust this if it resonates, but that could be part of the karma that's playing out. This can show up in so many expressions in so many ways. So not only is it about perhaps a father figure or mother figure who is absent, who worked a lot, Saturn in Pisces can show us where that person disappeared. They weren't available. Perhaps they were always at the office or they were always distracted by something else. This can directly relate to the father wound, the mother wound, or the family wound in this decan of Pisces, especially with Saturn here. And because the second decan of Pisces is ruled by Cancer and Cancer is ruled by the moon, this then brings up what your moon sign had to do to compensate. And you could go into a deep dive around this, of course, where you could understand, oh, that's why I had to do this instead of that, because my father wasn't available, my mother wasn't around. There are things I then had to do on my own or figure out on my own. There were parts of myself that I wasn't fully in touch with. So this other part of myself came in that was much stronger, more developed. And I'm seeing this as sort of a lopsided growth where that moon sign could have stepped in to compensate or overcompensate for what was perceived as a weakness, instead of allowing that weakness to grow and get stronger. And this would be a transiting phase of time to look at how to nurture and develop that perceived weakness, because I'm also feeling that it's so easy to avoid these parts of ourselves, to not look at them, to push them away, to think it doesn't matter, essentially abandon them, just as that part of you was abandoned by a parent or another person in your life who should have loved this part of your self-expression, who should have nurtured it, heard it, allowed it to be seen, allowed it to be developed. So there could be a lopsided energy here. And Saturn retrograde in Pisces brings up the coping mechanisms that are no longer working. What you have to assess and understand that you're meant to grow beyond this. You're maturing beyond this. You have more knowledge and more responsibility to yourself now. And this is in fact a part of your spiritual path, is that we have members of our family who are part of our soul group, and they set us up for the healing and for what we need to take care of in this lifetime that eventually supports our soul growth, even though it doesn't feel like that at times. So there is a divine understanding and purpose to all this, where you could have intentionally chosen to have a father who was really detached and unavailable. And this could have set you up to learn more about who you are and what you're capable of on your own terms, even though there is certainly an emotional wound with that. There's emotional pain. There's a part of yourself that was abandoned and rejected that may have eventually been left to simply wilt or die in the corner. And during this transit, Saturn is calling you to task, to take responsibility for what you can do for yourself now that the parent or elder wasn't able to do or give to you when you were younger. Now, there can also be family dynamics here when we look at the energy signatures of both Pisces and Cancer together. Spiritual connections to your family's spiritual lineage, and what has been taught and what has been assumed through generations, through family traditions. This Cancer Decan can bring up where you've come from and what you're doing about it that is actually in spiritual alignment for your own growth, what you are rising above and rising out of. Also where you are deciding to go your own way and break some of those family traditions or that expected path so that you can gain strength in trusting what is correct for you, especially in this lifetime and with the consciousness that's on the planet now. I'm also feeling with this particular Saturn retrograde that there are things that we are being asked to reconcile around our relationship with our father. And I'm actually getting the visual of a father who is very detached, quite focused on status and materialism and how he appears to others. I'm picking up on a father energy that doesn't see himself clearly, which is part of the Saturn and Pisces effect, because Pisces is where there is a loss of self-identity and even an idealism around self, like a sense of I'm so great, I'm so fantastic, look what I do for my family, look what I do for everyone. But inside, the energy feels quite shallow. And it's weird that I'm picking up this energy of a father who has zero emotional intelligence, like doesn't understand how he makes someone feel and can make his kids the butt of a joke. Like I'm seeing a group and he's like picking on one of his own kids and people are laughing at them. It's sort of like instead of giving love, the father is so all consumed with how he appears to others that he'll do anything to be liked or to gain approval, and will do it at the expense of a child. I'm also feeling the damage this has done, like the pain this has caused, like what has been shut down at the realization that my father is not safe. My father will sacrifice anyone for his own gain. My father is cold, a bully. There's an energy here of shallowness too, where the father was never a protector. Maybe he was a provider, but it was very cheap. It was sort of like, here's $20. Like, don't say I never did anything for you. I just gave you $20. It doesn't have any heart. It doesn't have any emotional connection. And there could be things here to reconcile that are hard to look at. And again, this is just the energy I'm feeling and picking up, so it might not apply to you or your experience, but it's something about the harshness of a masculine figure that shut down or damaged a beautiful, sensitive being. A beautiful, sensitive heart. You know, someone very creative who has a lot they want to express, a lot they want to do, who's very alive. And then the energy was shut down because it wasn't welcomed, it wasn't valued, and there was nothing about positive reinforcement. There was no kind of like, I'm really proud of you, or you did a great job. All of that was very minimal. It was like minimal positive feedback, and it created something of a split. I'm seeing a split, like the energy splits, and there's something that is shut down, pushed away. I can't be like that. I can't be seen like that. I can't be loved as that part of myself. And then there's another energy that comes alive and gets stronger because that is what the father did appreciate, or that is how the father did see the child or children in his family. So this could be looking at what you didn't get as a child that in fact has caused so much pain or even confusion, something that maybe you never even questioned, you never even thought about or considered. But this particular Saturn retrograde between 19 back to 12 degrees of Pisces could bring something alive in you that helps you get to the heart of your childhood conditioning and programming that was never your fault. Because honestly, it's all messed up. Like if you were on the receiving end of anything like that, that was never your fault. Like that's not something that you ever deserved. But now, as an adult or wherever you are on your journey, there could be something here that you're realizing, I'm going to move through this. I'm not going to allow this to delay my progress or my life path. I'm not going to allow this to hold me back or keep me frozen. Because I also feel this frozen energy that would absolutely make sense when you think of it in terms of fight or flight, freeze or fawn. It's like that frozen response. Like, how do I deal with this energy from a dominant masculine? How do I assert my power? How do I stand strong in who I am and what I need? So I feel like this is going to be an interesting Saturn retrograde that ultimately sets you free. It sets you free from a painful cycle or repressed memories. It sets you free from something that you didn't know was frozen in time within your own energy field, within your own unconscious self. Because Pisces is the unconscious. Pisces is also what we think we have to sacrifice in order to be here or to be loved. We think we have to self-sacrifice in order to be seen or cherished or respected. And I feel that this is where Saturn is saying, once you work through this, once you really claim more of who you are, all of who you are, you get stronger in your power, and now you can have better boundaries around those people in your life or anyone who resembles the father who comes into your experience. Keep in mind that with Saturn energy, Saturn transits, this can play out for you in the workplace with other authority figures. This can play out with a boss or a manager. It can also play out as you unconsciously reenacting the exact behavior that you witnessed and you experienced. So in other words, you realize, oh my gosh, I'm being my father. I'm doing exactly what he's done, or I didn't even realize this is how it landed for me. And now it's what I'm doing. It's how I'm showing up, and I want to course correct it. I want to work on this and make sure that I'm coming from the higher expressions of Pisces rather than the lower expressions of Pisces. So I don't want to escape. I don't want to avoid. I don't want to turn the other cheek or remain frozen in fear. Rather, I want to rise above and go higher, which is a Pisces invitation to go higher into being compassionate with yourself, that you did the best you could at that age. You didn't know better. How could you have known better? And to go higher and to forgive yourself. Forgive yourself for what you didn't know. And also look at where you are on that spectrum of forgiving a father figure or parental figure who didn't give you what you needed. I feel this is very generational. I feel this strongly as generations with Pluto in Cancer, Pluto in Leo, and how the planet was in a very different experience and a very different consciousness then. But this is where you could be working through layers of that to get to the other side. And keep in mind, the third decan of Pisces, which Saturn will enter in 2025 and 2026, is Scorpio. And that is the transformation. That is greater empowerment for what you have lost along the way, for what you have been through, even for the emotional toll that something has taken on you. The third decan of Pisces is about the phoenix rising from the ashes, setting you free and allowing you to move ahead on your own terms with a new sense of power. So this could be a theme that's front and center for you. This could be something that, again, you've never even thought about, and you're like, Molly, I don't even know if this relates. And then a few months later, maybe there's a trigger. Maybe there's something coming up here. And I hope that this information helps you fine-tune what you're healing and how you're spiritually growing. Because ultimately, this Saturn in Pisces, it wants us to be more developed in our spirituality, wants us to be stronger in how we can show up with all the energies on the planet without losing our way, without getting lost in the mayhem of it all. And also wants you to tune into your backbone and perhaps what needs to be strengthened there that gives you more support, gives you more confidence, and helps you release what you came to release in this lifetime. So that could be a part of the karmic unraveling, is that every Saturn retrograde can be revealing more that we're not meant to carry, as well as more of what is clearly ours and how it relates to your soul growth in this lifetime. So I hope this provided a new look at this particular Saturn retrograde, specifically in that second decan, which is ruled by Cancer, and allows you to get to the heart of what Saturn is helping you heal and how Saturn is moving you forward, even if it feels like you have to take 2 steps back at first. So I'll be back every Monday and Wednesday for a new podcast episode. Thank you so much for joining me, and we will keep discussing the Saturn retrograde in Pisces in the Wednesday weekly show. So we'll keep touching on it there too. Wishing you a beautiful day ahead. You can find all of my latest offerings at mollymccord.online, and I look forward to connecting with you again soon.